I knew the second Karen Caldwell strutted into the Harmony Grove HOA boardroom, wearing that blazer with her initials monogrammed on the cuff, like it was a crown that we were about to watch a slow-motion train wreck wrapped in pastel cardigans and passive-aggressive emails. The old president, Richard Caldwell, her father, had barely finished his retirement speech, all teary-eyed about 17 years of service, before his precious daughter glided in like she was launching a lifestyle brand, not inheriting control of the 2,000 home neighborhood that actually ran on quiet competence and actual lawnmowers. She didn't shake hands, didn't nod at half the board, just held up her phone, flashed a filter-heavy smile, and barked, "Everybody smile? New era Harmony." Nobody smiled. I watched from the back corner, standing behind Mark Harlan the way I always did during these meetings. I'm Lisa, 15-year resident of Maple Lane, and for 17 years, I'd watched Mark carry this whole HOA on his back without ever asking for credit. He was calm, unassuming, the guy who showed up at 6 a.m., with his old pickup to fix the sprinkler heads before anyone even noticed the brown spots. He knew every vendor, every clause in the bylaws, and somehow kept the Karen types from turning the place into a police state. So when Karen rolled in with her influencer hair and her vision board energy, completely ignoring Mark, I felt my stomach twist like I'd swallowed a lemon. She was going to wreck this place. And if you're already screaming at your screen wondering how someone like her ends up running your neighborhood, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, because the stories we're about to tell don't end the way the Karens of the world expect. The more people hear them, the less power these clipboard tyrants will have. Back in the room, the temperature dropped 10 degrees with every word Karen spewed. "Legacy systems are out," she declared, like we were a failing startup and not a federally compliant gated community. "We're going to rethink our entire maintenance stack. I want content. I want exposure. I want velocity. I wanted Advil." Mark said nothing, just tapped his pen once, twice against his legal pad. I leaned over and whispered, "You good?" He didn't look at me, just murmured, "Change is coming. Might as well see how dumb it gets." That was Mark's version of panic. I noticed how Karen's eyes flicked toward him once, a flash of pure disdain, like she couldn't believe the neighborhood still employed someone who used actual tools instead of apps. That moment stuck with me. Not just the disrespect, but because it was the first time I realized Karen wasn't just clueless. She was dangerous. The kind of dangerous that comes from never having mowed a single lawn in her life. The kind that thinks bylaws bend like TikTok trends. That your 15 years of quiet fixes are optional. That the guys in steel-toed boots, keeping the common areas pristine, are just numbers on a spreadsheet. She wrapped up with a half-hearted clap. "This is the new Harmony Grove. Fast, agile, sexy." Sexy? Lady, we're talking about grass height and pool pH levels. If you think that's sexy, you need therapy or a gardening fetish. After the meeting, I walked with Mark back toward the parking lot. He was quiet, eyes narrowed. "Thoughts?" I asked. "I've seen better leadership from microwave instructions," he muttered. We both laughed, but it was the bitter kind. We knew the foundation had cracked. What we didn't know, what Karen definitely didn't know, was that within 7 days Mark would own the one thing her entire HOA empire couldn't live without, and that would be the beginning of the end. The next meeting started with a playlist. I kid you not. Karen walked into the community center blasting some synth-heavy empowerment track from her phone like she was about to drop a skincare line, not outline the operational future of 2,000 homes. "All right, gang," she said, plopping into the president's chair like she'd earned it through anything besides nepotism. "Let's get disruptive." No one laughed. Karen didn't notice. She launched into her slideshow, complete with gifs about vision acceleration, synergy, and performance elasticity, which near as I could tell meant absolutely nothing. The woman could talk for 30 minutes and say less than a broken sprinkler head. Mark sat across the table, hands folded, notepad blank. I watched Karen clock that, and I swear you could see the petty little wheels turning in her highlighted skull. She was looking for a target. And Mark, calm, quiet, 17 years of fixing leaks without ever kissing a single board member's ring, made the perfect one. Operations, Karen said suddenly, flipping to a slide with a graphic of a sinking ship. Let's talk about that Titanic anchor we've been dragging around. Everyone turned. Mark didn't flinch. Karen leaned back, exaggerated smirk plastered on her face. Hey, Mark, you guys still using actual tools back there? Or is that too futuristic for you? I opened my mouth, closed it. The treasurer did the same. We were frozen. Not because it was clever, it wasn't, but because she had just publicly targeted the man who built the entire infrastructure, keeping her aesthetic, neighborhood, and business. Mark tilted his head like he was checking for a punchline. Karen kept going. Legacy ops have a shelf life. No offense, Mark, but some people, they age out of innovation. She turned to the treasurer. Start the paperwork. Standard severance package. Effective immediately. Then the cherry on the sundae. Dead weight sinks the ship. The room fell into absolute silence. The treasurer looked like she wanted to crawl under the folding table. The secretary cleared her throat, then stopped herself. And me? I was already reaching for my keys because if they were coming from Mark, none of our quiet little fixes were safe anymore. Mark stood up slowly, buttoned his old work jacket like a man finishing a funeral prayer. Not a word. Just walked the length of the table, shook 3 hands, mine last, then walked out the door with the same quiet grace he'd always carried, like a man who'd already done the math on something the rest of us hadn't even noticed. Karen, of course, tried to reclaim the room. Don't worry, folks. It's all part of the reorg. Trimming fat makes room for muscle. She winked. When? I felt my hands curl into fists beneath the table. But Mark's face haunted me. Not angry. Not crushed. Just calm. Calculating. Like he was already 10 moves ahead. And we were just pawns left on the board. At lunch, I saw him out in the parking lot, leaning against his pickup truck, talking into his phone. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the moment his eyes narrowed and he nodded once, sharp and final. It wasn't goodbye. It was the start of something. And I don't think Karen ever realized that when you throw dead weight off your ship, you'd better hope it doesn't know how to build a harbor. It was past 9 when I got the text. Dinner with Linda. Can't miss. Not personal, just timing. Mark wasn't the type to explain himself. So when he did, I knew something was brewing. I didn't reply, just stare at the message while reheating leftovers and listening to Karen's idiotic team update video looping through the neighborhood Facebook group like propaganda for a failing cult. By 9:45, Mark was sliding into a dim booth at Bar Leon, our old downtown spot, candlelight, good whiskey. He wore the same beat-up jacket he'd had since the big sprinkler overhaul in 2012. I knew because I was there when he ripped the sleeve on a fence post and refused to replace it, said it reminded him to double-check clearance settings. Classic Mark. Linda Chun, on the other hand, was crisp as ever. Owner of Greenscape Maintenance, Harmony Grove's sole certified landscaping and compliance contractor for 17 years. She wore her stress like subtle perfume, expensive but understated. Her laugh didn't come easy, but her sarcasm did. She ordered a glass of Pinot. Mark stuck with bourbon. She was venting before the waiter even set down the silverware. 2 years of courting that damn merger, and they bail at the 11th hour, she muttered, swirling her glass. Now I've got one foot in limbo and the other in a dumpster fire. The board want a buyer, the staff want a leader, and I want a freaking nap. Mark probably nodded once slow. He doesn't interrupt. He absorbs. That's what makes him lethal. He listens harder than most people talk. Linda laughed bitterly. If I had a few million lying around, I'd buy the damn place myself and put it out of its misery. And that's when something shifted. Mark didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He just set down his drink, looked her dead in the eye, and asked, how much for 51%? Not dramatic, not flirtatious, just business, but loaded like a grenade with the pin already halfway out. Linda blinked. You're serious? Dead serious, Mark replied. I've got capital. I've got someone who owes me a favor. You got a fire. I've got a hose. That's how he talks when he's locked in. No fluff. Just metaphors that hit like punches. Linda leaned back, watching him like she was trying to see where the sudden steel in his voice came from. They talked numbers, structure, transitional control clauses. Linda dropped her guard just long enough to say, "You know, Harmony Grove would lose its damn mind if Greenscape changed hands." Mark didn't blink. "That'd be a shame," he said. "Guess they should have held on to their ops director." When I checked my phone again around midnight, the only update was a photo from Linda's Instagram story. 2 glasses, one empty, one half full, caption, "Big shift, small sips." People thought Mark walked out of that boardroom defeated. But what they didn't realize, what Karen definitely didn't realize, was that Mark never needed a spotlight to build something. He just needed the right match and the right pile of dry timber. And that dinner? That was the first spark. By Thursday morning, I knew something was up. Mark wasn't posting in the neighborhood app, wasn't answering texts. And Mark always answered my texts, sometimes with just a thumbs up or a weird thumbs down emoji. But silence from him wasn't normal. Not unless he was working on something dangerous. I drove by his place that night after a brutal day of Karen's streamlining sessions. Corporate code for making retirees cry over their rose bushes. Mark's garage light was on. That meant business, not tinkering. Strategy. What I didn't know, what no one in Harmony Grove knew, was that Mark had already made 2 calls that morning. The first was to a guy named Jared Langston, an old colleague from the before times. Back when Harmony Grove was still a family-run development, Jared and Mark had built out half the vendor ecosystem from scratch. Jared had left after a buyout, moved into the venture capital world. Rumor was he now ran some shadowy private fund that specialized in distress service contracts. Mark didn't need a loan. He needed a partner who understood leverage. Jared answered on the first ring. The second call was to Linda. Direct. No small talk. Just this. Draw up the purchase agreement. I'm ready. Between Mark's severance, his personal savings, 17 years of careful, quiet living, and Jared's injection, they had just enough. Not to take over everything. Just 51%. The number that mattered. By Friday, at 4:32 p.m., the Greenscape legal team sent over the final draft. Mark read every line, double-checked the clause that mattered most. Section 7.4, fulfillment holds and contract recalibration rights. Majority owner discretion. He didn't smile when he signed. He didn't pop champagne. He just clicked his pen, signed the last page at 4:45 p.m., and said, "Effective now." Linda nodded. "Want to tell them, or should I pause all Harmony Grove services?" Mark said, "Mark them under review." That was it. No fireworks, no social media announcement, just quiet surgical interruption, like pulling the right wire to disable a bomb. Except this bomb had been ticking since Karen called him deadweight in front of the entire board. The pause didn't trigger any alerts. Not at first. Greenscape systems were set up to accommodate these kinds of holds, temporary, technically legal. It wouldn't raise flags until Monday morning when every homeowner would be looking for the weekly mow that wasn't coming. Mark didn't gloat. He didn't call anyone to brag. He just walked back to his truck, tossed the manila folder in the glove box, and drove home with the windows down. I imagine he didn't even turn on the radio. Because when your whole life has been about making systems run smoothly, there's a special kind of peace in knowing you've just broken the one thing no one else knows how to fix. I found out Saturday. Linda forwarded me the welcome packet from Greenscape's internal reorg doc. At the top, ownership update effective immediately. Mark Harlan. Under that, a note from her, 2 lines long. Tell your HOA president she should have paid attention in ops meetings. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because I knew the second that hold hit our streets, Karen would learn what real disruption looks like. And the worst part? She'd have no one left to blame but herself. I got to the community center at 6:45 a.m. Walked past a common area that looked like a ghost town. No mowers, no edging crew, no morning rush, just a guy from maintenance leaning on a hedge trimmer, scrolling through his phone with that something's not right look in his eyes. Inside, the usual hum of Saturday landscaping was missing. Instead, it was the eerie sound of silence, and one of the floor leads arguing with a vendor rep over Bluetooth. By 7:10, the neighborhood Facebook group was on fire. Anyone seen the Greenscape trucks? My lawn is already at 3.5 inches. HOA violation incoming. Procurement confirmed. Shipment hold. All services tagged under review. And then it hit the group like a wave of acid reflux. Karen strolled in late, iced latte in hand, hair perfectly coiffed, wearing that blazer with sleeves rolled up like she just wrapped a TED Talk on lawn aesthetics. She walked into the community center like the queen of a cardboard kingdom, humming something that sounded suspiciously like a Drake song. "What's with all the doom and gloom?" she said, dropping her bag onto the polished table. "Greenscape paused fulfillment," the treasurer said flatly. "No services came in over the weekend. We've got lawns sitting half-finished. Common areas frozen. We're bleeding compliance hours." Karen rolled her eyes and waved a hand. "It's a glitch. Linda probably missed a button in their app. Shoot over a Get Your Together email and tell them we'll escalate legally if they don't comply." The treasurer just blinked. "We already did." They responded that the hold is compliant under Section 7.4 of their master agreement. Ownership clause. Karen froze for half a beat. "Wait, what ownership clause?" At that point, the HOA attorney, Robert Chung, bless his risk-averse soul, entered holding a binder like it was radioactive. "We reviewed the contract. Section 7.4 does indeed allow a majority owner to pause fulfillment and renegotiate terms pending a material change in ownership." Material change? Karen scoffed. "It's still Greenscape. It's not like the damn company vanished overnight." Robert's face did this thing. He didn't blink, just slowly closed the binder and looked at Karen like he was trying to break bad news to a toddler holding a pair of scissors. "There was a change, Karen. Significant enough to trigger 7.4. I have procurement digging through who signed the transition paperwork on their side, but as of right now, Harmony Grove has zero material flow from our only certified maintenance provider. No mowing, no edging, no pool chemical balancing. Nothing." Karen's smirk cracked just slightly. "You're telling me we can't maintain anything? Not without those services. No compliant lawns, no pool certifications, no common area standards. Nothing." She stood up fast, knocking over her latte. "Call Linda right now. This is a breach, and I will not be strong-armed by a vendor we've kept in business for a decade." But Linda didn't answer. Neither did her assistant. Every number the treasurer had for Greenscape routed to a new voice menu, one that said in crisp tones, "Thank you for contacting Greenscape Maintenance. If you're inquiring about fulfillment under review, please contact Owner Relations." Karen blinked at the phrase like it was a foreign language. I was watching from my living room laptop, every camera feed pouring in with stalled crews and homeowners pacing like trap dogs. Then procurement dropped the final nail. Internal wire confirms there was a buyout Friday. 51% equity reassigned. To who? Karen demanded, face flushing. No one answered yet. Karen was already pacing like a caged raccoon by the time her assistant cracked the code. The kid looked like he hadn't slept. Shirt wrinkled, tie abandoned somewhere between the break room, and full-on existential collapse. Karen had barked at him to dig deeper into the Greenscape ownership change. And to his credit, he delivered. "Ma'am," he said, hovering by the door like he was about to deliver a jury verdict. Karen didn't even look at him. "Unless you're holding a service confirmation, not now." He hesitated. "You're going to want to see this." He held out a tablet. On screen was a niche trade site, Midwest Community Services News, the kind of publication only HOA nerds and regional acquisition attorneys read for fun. The headline was quiet, understated. "Veteran operations expert acquires controlling stake in Greenscape Maintenance." Karen didn't react at first, just kept reading until her eyes reached the byline date, Friday afternoon, and then she saw the photo. Mark, gray hair still peppered, no suit, just his signature work jacket, standing shoulder to shoulder with Linda Chun, both smiling like two generals who'd just redrawn a war map. The blood drained from Karen's face so fast, I thought she might faint. "What the hell?" she muttered, the words barely making it out. The assistant stayed silent, which was probably the smartest decision he'd made since taking the job. Karen snatched the tablet, stared at the image again. This has to be old, she said. But it was pure denial, time-stamped, verified, accompanied by a short interview with Linda, calling it a strategic stabilization move. That was PR speak for, get the hell out before Karen takes us down with her. Get Greenscape on the line, Karen said through clenched teeth. Right now, the assistant fumbled for the phone. It rang twice. Then an automated message kicked in. Thank you for contacting Greenscape Maintenance. To speak with purchasing, press 1. For shipping and fulfillment, press 2. For owner relations, press 3. Karen's eye twitched. She jabbed 3. Another automated response. You've reached owner relations. Please leave a message and a representative will return your call in the order it was received. There was a long beep. And for the first time since her arrival, Karen didn't speak, didn't posture, didn't threaten legal action. She just stood there, phone still in hand, breathing heavy like she'd just been sucker punched in the gut by a ghost she thought she'd buried. Because that's what Mark was now. Not a former volunteer, not a disgruntled old-timer, not deadweight. He was the owner, the one holding Karen's entire neighborhood hostage. And the only door left to knock on was one Karen had slammed shut herself. I watched it all unfold from behind my laptop screen. The Facebook group pings, the canceled landscaping schedules, the rising tide of WTF is happening posts from homeowners. And in the middle of it all, Karen's eyes hollow, still staring at a photo of the man she fired 3 days ago. No more smirks, no more buzzwords, just the quiet, dawning horror that the game had flipped. And Karen, she didn't even know the rules anymore. They called the emergency board meeting for noon. Just 12 stone-faced directors seated in a room, so quiet you could hear the HVAC system grumbling like it wanted no part of this disaster. I wasn't in the room, obviously, but I know the tone. I've heard that silence before. It's the kind that comes right before someone gets professionally gutted with a stainless steel smile. Karen walked in looking like a sorority girl called to the principal's office. The blazer was gone, sleeves rolled up again, trying to look in control. She took the head seat, glanced around, and opened with a lie so limp it didn't even try to flex. Minor hiccup on the maintenance front, she said, trying to sound breezy. Greenscape's going through a reorg, which has created a short-term delay in services. But you've missed 2 compliance windows, snapped Lucinda Haverly, one of the oldest board members and not known for patience. 2, including the Riverton Pool certification. That's a $9,300 fine window we're now in breach of from the county. Karen blinked. It's logistics noise. We've already escalated. Procurement is working on. You said last week you had maintenance locked down? Another director interrupted. Voice low but deadly. So what changed? Karen squirmed. There was an ownership transition on Greenscape's side. Transition? Lucinda asked. That contract has a continuity clause. It should have protected us. Karen hesitated, then tried for a confident shrug. We ran into a legacy conflict. That's what she called it, a legacy conflict. There was a beat of silence. Then James Du Bois, ex-military, ex-BlackRock, current board chair, pulled out a printed article. Yes, printed. And began reading aloud like he was delivering a eulogy. Veteran operations expert acquires controlling stake in Greenscape Maintenance. Mark Harlan, former operations director at Harmony Grove, HOA, signed the purchase agreement Friday, confirming 51% ownership. He stopped, looked up. Mark Harlan. Karen shifted in her chair. Look, Mark he was due for retirement. He'd been with the community for years, and frankly, his approach wasn't aligned with you fired our maintenance provider's new majority owner. Lucinda said, voice rising. Are you out of your damn mind? I didn't know he was buying Greenscape. Karen barked. That's because you didn't ask, someone shouted. It's not like he announced it on the Facebook group. Karen snapped. He didn't need to. You made a show of kicking him out like dead weight in front of the entire board. And 3 days later, he's sitting on the lawnmower faucet with his hand on the valve. James slammed the article down on the table. We're not just talking about a late mow. We're talking about breach exposure, lost county certifications, fines piling up on every homeowner, and vendor replacement timelines that take months, not weeks, And all of that because you decided to insult the one man who understood this neighborhood skeleton better than your own damn Instagram feed. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever defense, she had collapsed under the weight of the glares around the table. Because here's the thing about power. You can fake it with buzzwords, post it on social media, even shove it down people's throats for a while. But the second it breaks down in the real world, no amount of pastel-colored fines will shield you from the backlash. And in that moment, Karen Caldwell, the HOA president with the influencer swagger, realized she wasn't in charge anymore. Not of the board, not of the neighborhood, not of a single damn blade of grass. The man she fired had become the lifeline they needed, and now they'd all have to crawl to get it back. Karen sent the email at 7:03 a.m. The next morning. Subject line, let's talk. Short, casual, like they were old neighbors and not two people on opposite ends of a suburban hostage situation. Mark didn't reply. Not right away. He let Karen sweat for 6 hours, during which time 2 more county inspectors paused certifications, 3 homeowners posted viral rants about Karen's lawn apocalypse, and the Treasure Dam near started a mutiny trying to explain to the neighborhood why they were using last week's violation notices on loop. Finally, just before lunch, Mark responded, 3 p.m. Community Center Conference Room C. Bring legal. That's all it said. No greeting, no sign-off, just a calendar slot and a location. At 2:57, I watched Karen head toward Conference Room C. Shoulders tense, sweat already blooming under her collar. She'd trimmed the highlights, she grew to look more presidential, and now it just made her look like she was trying to escape her own face. Legal trailed behind her, clutching binders like lifeboats on a sinking ship. Mark was already there when they walked in, standing, waiting. No suit, just his old work jacket, the one with the torn sleeve and oil smudge cuff. It was his version of war paint. There was a single manila folder on the table and a notary seated beside it. Bored but ready. When Karen opened her mouth, Mark held up a hand. Not dismissively. Surgically. No preamble, he said. Just terms. He opened the folder and slid the contract across the table. Legal picked it up like it might explode. Karen tried to glance at the notary, but was ignored. The contract was simple. Triple rates for all services, 100% payment up front, no volume discounts, no expedited mowing deals, 90-day terms, unbreakable, exclusive vendor status revoked. Greenscape now serves Harmony Grove's competitors equally. Karen blinked. This is extortion. No, Mark said, finally sitting. This is recalibration. He turned to the notary. This is Mark Harlan, majority stakeholder and acting principal of Greenscape Maintenance. These are our new terms for any continued relationship with Harmony Grove, HOA. He looked back at Karen. You want me back. You pay for the privilege. Karen's mouth worked silently for a moment. We Harmony Grove built your business. Mark raised an eyebrow. Harmony Grove paid invoices. I built the system. You just inherited it. Legal leaned over to whisper something. Probably some desperate clause loophole. But Mark was ready. Don't bother, he said. Section 7.4 has teeth, and you'll find my ownership has been notarized, certified, and filed with the state. If you want to spend 6 months in arbitration while your lawns turn into hayfields and your fines hit 6 figures, be my guest. There was a long, sour silence. Karen was sweating bullets now. Not a drop of control left in her, just an overpromoted brat realizing she wasn't in a Pinterest meeting anymore. She was at the mercy of the man she tried to humiliate. Mark tapped the folder once. You've got 24 hours. After that, the rate goes up another 20%. And I start offering priority pricing to your neighboring HOAs. First come, first served. Karen stared at the contract like it had personally insulted her highlights. This is vengeance, she muttered. No, Mark said calmly, standing again. This is memory. He didn't shake hands, didn't gloat, just nodded to the notary, picked up his folder, and walked out. By the time he hit the parking lot, the treasurer had already emailed him 3 separate requests to resume services. He ignored them, let Karen squirm a little longer. This wasn't about saving Harmony Grove. This was about resetting the order of things and making damn sure no one ever mistook silence for surrender again. The contract was signed at 10:42 a.m. No champagne, no victory dance, just 12 tight-lipped board members putting pen to paper like they were signing their own autopsies. Karen wasn't in the room. She'd been excused 15 minutes earlier after James Du Bois pulled her aside with a tone so cold it made the glass walls fog. The memo read, "Karen Caldwell has stepped down as president to pursue new opportunities. We thank her for her service. Translation, she's gone. And don't ask questions unless you want to join her." The second memo went out an hour later. This one quieter. Internal only. Mark Harlan has been offered a permanent seat on the Harmony Grove Advisory Board. I saw the email in real time. Then 30 minutes later, another email from Mark. Subject, decline. Body, I didn't work 17 years to advise the people who never listened. No signature, just that. That afternoon, I stepped outside for a break and saw it with my own eyes. Greenscape's trucks pulling up to the Old West entrance, once reserved exclusively for Harmony Grove inbound materials. Only now, they weren't unloading. They were picking up. Pallets rolled out labeled for Silvercrest HOA Valor Estates, even a fancy new development across the highway. Greenscape had gone wide. Mark didn't rebuild Harmony Grove's maintenance chain. He outgrew it. I watched as a brand new Greenscape banner unfurled over the loading dock, deep navy blue with a bold white logo. It looked nothing like our old supplier badge. It looked like a flag, a declaration. A few of the younger homeowners gathered near the window, whispering, "Didn't he used to run ops?" Yeah, the guy Karen called dead weight. It said like it was legend. Like they were realizing in real time the guy who used to quietly walk the streets with a clipboard had just flipped the entire food chain on its head. And where was Mark driving? I don't know where to. Doesn't really matter. All I know is he passed the HOA headquarters around 3 p.m. Didn't slow down. Didn't look up. Just kept going. Windows down. One hand on the wheel. The other resting on the manila folder in his passenger seat. The same one he dropped in front of legal when he redrew the neighborhood survival map. Maybe he smiled. Maybe not. But I like to think he did. Just a little, because Karen was right about one thing. Dead weight does affect a ship. But she got the metaphor all wrong. Dead weight doesn't sink ships. Dead weight learns to own the harbor.